Welcome back to Vintage and Voltage. So today, welcome back to Vintage and Voltage. You're probably thinking that I'm making a video right now about the truck, but actually, I'm doing something a little bit different today. So this channel was actually originally started, well, a very long time ago, about a different project. And I kind of lost track of it. It's kind of my dream car. It's been unfortunately sitting in the garage for a really, really long time, just kind of neglected. So I've kind of decided it's time to get back on track with that project. So allow me to introduce Vintage and Voltage's first real project, the original project, the reason this channel was created. This is my 1970 Datsun 2000. I bought this back in 2015 with the intention of restoring it back to its original shape and having it done and ready for my wedding. Unfortunately, due to finances and time concerns, it sort of got abandoned. We had to put it on hold. And then of course the truck ended up taking first stage and I started kind of focusing on that a little bit more. So anyhow, after all this time and all of this being ignored and kind of turning it into a shelf, I've decided it's time to refocus and to do things a little bit differently from what I had originally planned. The original plan, kind of like I said, was to use the original engine, which is a U20 that's been rebuilt, and the original 5-speed transmission, but anyone that's been watching this channel knows that I am not someone that can leave things alone or stock. Stock is boring. So finally, after many years of deliberating on what engine I wanted to use and how I wanted to do things and what the ultimate form of this car was going to be, I've made a decision. This is the new version of this car. So here we have the original Datsun U20, 135-ish horsepower. You know, good old-fashioned 60s technology. Great engine, super rare, very hard to find parts for. And this is a K20 A2 out of an RSX Type S. Now I know she's ugly right now, she's covered in oil, it's in need of a whole lot of change in order to make it into something worthwhile, but this is a special engine. This engine is capable of revving up to about 9,000 RPM and making over 200 horsepower at the crank. And of course, this originally came out of a front-wheel drive car, so we're gonna have to do something about that. Unfortunately, I'd love to say that this transmission is mine, but it's borrowed. This is a transmission out of a BRZ, and I think it is the transmission that we're ultimately going to end up installing in this car. But we need to kind of do some test fitting to see if it's actually going to work. The main reasons I'm going with this transmission, because anyone that knows anything about these transmissions is probably going to know that they are well known for being total glass cannons. They don't handle a lot of power, and they don't do it very well. But my ultimate goals for this engine are to make somewhere in the vicinity of 200 to 250 wheel horsepower, and 250 wheel horsepower is well within the capability of this transmission. So the real reason I'm going with this transmission, really two things. One, it's a 6-speed and it shifts really nice. So, I mean, it's like the feel is really good. It's kind of got the characteristics from a transmission that I'm looking for. And then probably the most important thing, packaging. This is a tiny car. So we need a tiny transmission that fits. And believe it or not, in fact, I think I can demonstrate this. They are almost the same size. They're very, very, very close. And the one fear that I had with this transmission was that this shifter was going to end up being way too far back, because the BRZ and FRS shifter sits super far back on this weird little frame thing. But after looking at it in person, I'm pretty sure I can modify that and cut it down and put the shifter anywhere I want, because it's kind of got a linkage style thing. So if I shorten the linkage, I can choose where the shifter comes out. If that works, that's actually kind of better, because it means I can kind of do whatever I want and make it like the most ideal driver's car I can possibly manage, which obviously I'm gonna do if I can. So after doing a lot of measuring, I've pretty well determined that the engine itself is gonna fit in here and under the hood. We don't know yet. I haven't actually stuck it in the engine bay yet, but the tape measure says it should work. And hopefully the transmission will work too. So I think it's time to find out. Oh, dude, that's tons of room. There's boatloads of room.
And you could even fold these pinch welds over and get even more out of it.
I might do that. That might actually be worthwhile. And the slave cylinder just like tucks right into this little cubby area here. Dude, that is not bad at all.
Why don't you get a measurement from the front of the bell housing to this cross member?
That's a good idea.
Check to see if the length of the engine is going to be an issue. We still need to clear that with yourself.
Use my Mighty Car Mods tape measure here. Shout out Mighty Car Mods. About 18 inches to like, and that's above the pinch weld, but that's more likely where it's actually going to interfere.
And it does look mostly level with that cross member to the bottom of the transmission.
Yeah.
Maybe it's about an inch lower or something.
I don't know with the adapter exactly where that's going to end up sitting, but I can notch that front cross member if I need to. And it's about 16.5 inches on the bottom part of the oil pan from the front of the oil pan to where the transmission attaches. I think the adapter is like 3/4 of an inch or an inch or so thick. I'll have to look that up to double check. But it's not bad at all, dude. I think we've got a game plan. So obviously getting anything other than the original engine into such a small car comes with some challenges. One of the biggest concerns I had with this transmission is that this mechanism on the 8.6 transmission is so long. The shifter, you can see on the original transmission, is kind of right at the bell housing. And while these transmissions are almost exactly the same length, like shockingly close actually, the shifter is obviously significantly longer and further back on the 8.6 transmission. But I've got a game plan. This section of aluminum right here is basically completely straight. This rod, which is part of the linkage that helps this thing change gears, is also basically completely straight, which means we should be able to, without really changing anything, cut and shorten this section and cut and shorten this section an equal amount, and then it's not going to make any difference to the way that the transmission feels. All it's going to do is position the shifter wherever we want it. This is like kind of huge. It sort of doesn't get better when you're doing some kind of crazy custom modification like this. This is typically something you can't really change very well, like your shifter location. It's kind of going to fall where it goes. In this case, what we can do is we can put this engine and transmission into the car, get everything kind of where it's going to live as far as, you know, clearance and all of those things, and ignore the shifter location completely. And then after everything is positioned, we can adjust the shifter location to be perfect, exactly where it's going to be the most comfortable. That's awesome. That has my heart set on an 8.6 transmission. This is the coolest thing. I'm so glad I got to test fit this. The biggest concern I had with this transmission has turned into the biggest advantage. The only other, I guess, concerns we have with this is that the transmission mounts on the 8.6 transmission are kind of back here on the very end, on the tail section. On the Datsun, there's a cross member that sort of goes right across this area that makes this section completely inaccessible. So we're going to have to create some kind of a cradle that will bolt to the transmission and then carry the transmission mount forward to match somewhat closely to where the transmission mount is on the original transmission. The 5-speed transmission has a mount right here. So if we can get it just, what is that, about 6 inches further forward, it's going to be just about perfect. And then the last thing we need is just an adapter plate. I was originally a little bit concerned about the shifter the starter location, because it's kind of weird. It's sort of tucked up high on the transmission, and I wasn't sure that was going to work. It won't, but that's not a problem. After looking up the FRS to K-motor kit that adapts these things together, you actually block off the starter plate, and the OEM starter location, which unfortunately I don't think I'm going to be able to show you on the motor, it's basically right around here on the other side. Or no, it is right here. I've got it off, I forgot. So yeah, the starter location is right here, which is obviously fully out of the way. So that starter location on the 8.6 transmission is truly not a problem at all. It's kind of solved by itself. So long story short, this is gonna work.